Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Parker Eimerl, and this is the Conversation Station. I want you to think about burnout, right? This idea of burnout, this idea of momentum, this idea of when you don't versus when you do have it. Because it's something that's been on my mind this week, because I've been experiencing some level of burnout where I haven't been quite as energized, right? Not quite as, I just haven't had that energy throughout the day as much as I usually do. But I think analyzing it is important. And I think it comes down to a couple of things, right? There are these major factors that play into this entire game of burnout through my eyes, and it's this idea of lack of purpose is the first big one. It is really easy to get burned out on a specific task or in a specific environment where you don't have a purpose or you don't align with the purpose of that environment. So think about like when you're in a work environment tasked with doing something that doesn't align with your values or your purpose as a person. I've certainly experienced this. But then I also think it can come down to a lack of discipline, right? Because sometimes we get a tiny tick down in our motivation, and then we start to be less disciplined, right? So we sleep in a little later, or we don't work out quite as hard. And all of these things compound. So every time that you get a little less disciplined, you're going to get a little bit more burnt out because you aren't getting things done. And I think it's interesting, though, because in a lot of these things, we have to weather the storm, right? That's how I like to put it, because it would be really easy for me, since I'm not feeling 100% in terms of momentum. It would be really easy for me to see that and decide, you know what, I'm not going to do a podcast episode today. But is that going to help or worsen my burnout when tomorrow I realize I failed the challenge I set for myself? Right? And so sometimes we have to weather the storm because we have responsibilities that we need to do. And I think along with that, I want to introduce this other general concept of burnout. And burnout it's this idea that burnout comes through energy leaks. So when you have energy leaks in your life, different areas that are leaking energy, it's going to take the energy out of other parts of your life. And now an energy leak is, not working out or sleeping in, depending on the person, right? And so an energy leak isn't necessarily as straightforward as it looks. It's not, I stayed up late, because we all have those times where we stay up till 4 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. and we are amped. And we have those days when we go to bed at, freaking 6 p.m. and wake up at, 8 a.m. and we are not ready to go. And so it's really important to keep in mind that there are these energy leaks. And when you find them, you need to eliminate the ones you can eliminate and mitigate the others as fast and as well as possible. Because like I said, there are going to be responsibilities in your life which you don't have the ability to eliminate, right? You're going to have put out a commitment. But you can mitigate that, right? I mean, I think an energy leak for me this week has certainly been the podcast, but the biggest thing was the hour at which I was putting it out. I was procrastinating until late at night to record, and it was an energy killer. And so I'm not doing perfect on that today, but it is something I'm working on this week, mitigating, because I identified it as a problem. You need to identify it, identify the leak, and either eliminate or mitigate it as fast as possible so that you can get back on track. Now, another energy leak is not waking up as early as I have been. And it is hard to wake up early when you are burnt out, but it is completely and totally essential to get back on whatever it is that supports you, even though it's a lot harder to get back on those things. And I'm certainly not, again, I don't want to seem like some perfect guy, because I'm not some perfect guy. I'm a kid trying my best to become the best version of myself. And I'll be honest, this week, I haven't gotten up as early as I should be getting up. But I am working on it. That's what's important. Tomorrow I have already made the mental contract with myself that I will be getting up early, and I will be recording a podcast episode early in the day so that I don't have to worry about it at night, but I will be recording a second one at night so that I can get ahead of the podcast schedule. So I'm noticing these leaks, and I'm not going to stop podcasting because I made a commitment and I'd like to keep it going. But I am mitigating it because I was able to identify it, right? Now, again, these things all play into each other. So when you are burnt out, so you get burnt out because of a lack of purpose and a lack of discipline. But when you are burnt out, being burnt out contributes to your lack of discipline, and your lack of discipline contributes to your lack of purpose. And so what we have to do is we have to be very intentional with our actions, especially when we are burnt out. That is when it is time to become an extra level of aware, right? Because we need to be aware, and we have to snap out of it. And it's very difficult. It is by no means just a random snap out. You have to be thinking about it. And when you have momentum, you don't have to make a conscious effort to do the things to be disciplined. When you have momentum, you don't need to make a conscious effort to be disciplined. But when you are burnt out, you have to make an extremely conscious decision to be disciplined. Now, I do think that is putting it a little roughly. You do have to be somewhat conscious of being disciplined when you have momentum, but it is infinitely easier to be disciplined. And so it's important that we keep all of these things in mind in our lives, and that we don't let burnout ruin us, right? Because the longer you're burnt out, the harder it is to reignite that flame, right? If I stop podcasting for a day, okay, it wouldn't be too hard to start back up the next day. But if I don't podcast for 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, right? So at 3 days, it's going to be much harder than that first day of not doing it. At day 7, it's going to be harder. And so that's why we have to weather the storm. That's why we have to keep doing our responsibilities, even when we're not inspired to do them, because we can get that inspiration back, but it is harder to get that inspiration back when you are doing nothing. So you need to be conscious of the fact that you are still doing something with your life, and that you are still doing the things that you were doing when you had momentum. Now, you might not be as amped, you might not be as excited to do them, but you are doing them anyway because you know it will help you. That's what's important to keep in mind here. There is no secret to any of this. And although I'm sure Jordan Peterson has some sort of secret to this, but again, I'm not Jordan Peterson. I'm just trying to better myself. But what we need to keep in mind is it is way harder, remember this, it is way harder to get momentum when you are standing still. It is way harder to get over burnout when you have no momentum. And now burnout does take down your momentum, but if you have the mental fortitude to keep doing what you need to do, even when you are burnt out, even when you aren't excited to do it, then as opposed to it taking a month to find your momentum again, it can take 3-4 days, a week. It'll take a much shorter span of time if you are continuing to put in this effort, right? And that's the entire basis of discipline, is doing it when you don't want to do it. But the great thing about discipline is when you do that, it helps you want to do it, right? So when you do the thing when you don't want to do it, it makes it easier to do it, and it makes you want to do it. And that's what I love about this entire concept of discipline, is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you have discipline, being disciplined becomes easier. And when being disciplined becomes easier, you have more discipline, right? So it's a constant loop, a constant feedback loop, a positive feedback loop. And I think the most important thing to be disciplined with for me, right? Now, when I have commitments like this, I have to be disciplined with it. But the most important thing for me is to do that workout, to do whatever it is, even if I can't get it in the morning, because if I wake up late, right, I lost momentum there, but that is no excuse to lose momentum in working out. Now, it can be harder to get it in the evenings because everyone is up in the evenings versus if you wake up early in the morning when no one else is up, it's a lot easier. But what you can do, and what I do, and what I'm actually going to do right after I finish recording this, I'm going to edit it, start it uploading, and then I'm actually just going to go for a 1 mile run real quick, right? I can run a mile in about 7 minutes. And so it is a 7-minute workout, but it is hard because I'm trying to run it as fast as I can. And so I'm pushing myself in a short period of time. And although that might not be my end game when it comes to a workout, I did it. Right? I got that win. I didn't lose, right? Sometimes it's not about winning. It's more about not losing, right? So when you don't have momentum, when you are burnt out, it's less about winning, right? It's more about maintaining the baseline and keeping your baseline higher than it was before. So constantly upping your baseline. So I like to consider burnout as the baseline. When I am burnt out, what is the bare minimum I am doing? Because the higher that baseline is, the closer you can push that baseline to when you have momentum, you can make it near impossible to burn out. And that, my friends, is the biggest and most important thing to master in your lives. If you can master never being burnt out and always being excited about life and learn what your baseline needs to be in order to achieve that, well, then you're living a sustainably happy lifestyle. And in my opinion, that is the definition of success. Thank you guys at home for watching. I'm Parker Eimerl. I've been talking to you, and this has been The Conversation Station.